on where we are with the U.S.-China trade talks. Let's welcome Senator Rick Scott of Florida. Senator, you're on set. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, making sure all the jobs continue to move to Florida.
I know you do that. You come in here and, you're in New York and you talk about...
Talks of Florida.
Talking about...
tweets about Florida.
Thank
goodness. About Florida.
Steal our business.
I send thank you notes to Cuomo all the time. Thank you for raising taxes, congestion fees, all this stuff. It's good for us, you know?
It's like needling. Needling you, Andrew. No. So what about... do you know anything about where the trade talks? Anything that's not reported just in the press?
I talk to Ambassador Lighthizer every time I talk to him. He's very optimistic that something's going to happen. He knows that we have to do a deal that really makes sense for us. We got to stop them stealing our technology. I think Americans need to understand China's not our friend. They're our competitor. They're trying to build a military superior to ours. So we ought to be very cautious about buying anything Chinese. And let's see what comes out. But we've got to have a tough trade deal where they stop stealing our technology, everything. I was up at a company in Chicago yesterday, and a WeatherTech, and I was talking to David McNeil, and he said from China they put his name on their product and sell it here.
Is there concern about the so-called enforcement mechanism in this deal? Because President Trump has made it clear that he wants a mechanism where complaints can be dealt with very quickly without using a body like the WTO. But if this is a reciprocal agreement, feasibly China will have the same ability to do that, and we would effectively be letting the Chinese decide whether or not we are in compliance or not when it comes to retaliatory tariffs.
I think America is pretty good about complying with things, and they look at countries like Russia and China are pretty bad about complying with things. So I wouldn't worry about that so much. I'm worried about them constantly stealing our technology and basically taking our product and selling it and using our company's name and technology and know-how and just taking advantage of us. It's wrong. We ought to be very cautious about buying anything from China. They are not our friend.
So I don't know if you saw one of the big pieces of news yesterday was this Apple Qualcomm coming together finally, but we talk about 5G all the time, and Huawei underneath that is sort of a big part of that debate. When you think about Huawei, and I don't know how much time you spend...
Don't do any business with Huawei. I mean, the Chinese government's involved in every decision. They're going to...
But the question is that a national security issue or is that a competition issue?
National security.
And how do you separate the two? Because there are some that will say it's a national security issue. And there are others on the other side who say it's really, in an America First world where you actually want to be the dominant player, we need to make sure that Huawei doesn't accelerate its growth all over the world because we'll put our own companies in a more challenged position.
I think it's all national security. I'm fine. I'm a business guy. I'm fine with competing. Americans are fine with competing. We'll win in a level playing field. But we cannot let the Chinese government in to have all the information that Huawei has. And that's what they're involved in the company. They control the company. We have to understand China is our enemy. They are not our friend.
Okay.
We've got to be very cautious.
Hey, Senator, so you're a huge advocate for lower taxes, obviously, coming from Florida, and private sector solutions to a lot of things, whether you're talking about medical care or whatever. So Bernie Sanders in the Midwest now, apparently trying to appeal to a lot of the voters that voted President Trump in a few years ago. Will that appeal work? I don't know if you saw any of the town hall. He actually went into what people are characterizing as hostile
enemy territory.
And enemy territory. And CNN thinks that Fox might get some credibility for having Bernie on. Of all places, CNN says Fox might get some.
I'm going to the Venezuelan border next week. I'm going to Colombia. I'll be in the Venezuelan border. If you like Bernie Sanders, why don't you go ahead and move to Caracas?
Well, democratic socialism is different than socialism, is what some people would say, right, Andrew?
Well, I think the issue is that what's happened here. Here's what's happened.
Okay.
I think the word socialism, for some people, and it's generational, is connected really to communism, right? Let's just say it's socialism, communism, and that's all it is.
It leads to tyranny.
It'd be Russia, right?
So in many ways it is a slur and is a terrible, terrible thing. I think that what's happened is there's a whole new generation of people who look at the word socialism and don't have those connotations.
That's why I said democratic social. That's why I said that.
Socialism.
But thanks for explaining everything. But that's why I said democratic. We understand Sweden. We got it. We understand. But is that going to appeal to voters?
No. I mean, Americans,
could Bernie Sanders be elected in this country, do you think?
Will Bernie Sanders be elected?
Could he be elected president of the United States? Could he get more than 30%?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think he has a legitimate shot at getting the Democrat nomination.
Right. That's unbelievable to me.
You put that up. I think President Trump would win, but you never know what's going to happen. Politics changes. People make mistakes. All sorts of things. So, but if it's a choice, do we want a free market where kids like me that grew up in public housing could go build companies and run for office? Or do you want the government to dictate exactly what everybody's going to do? Make all your decisions?
Bernie I think that's the distinction. I'm not advocating on behalf of Bernie Sanders at all, but I think the distinction is that a lot of the things that he's talking about is not a complete statist. Every company is effectively owned by the government. It's in many occasions a public option where there's a government.
The other side says it's a slippery slope.
Slippery slope.
And
I totally accept that, but I'm just trying to make the distinction because I think this conversation sort of often gets muddled.
Did you see Bernie is, I don't know, he likes some of the tax breaks he's getting from the tax law. He's not paying pre-tax reform taxes.
He's in the 1%.
Yeah, he is, but he's going to take full advantage of all those, and he thought it was ridiculous to even be asked the question.
Just get more of it? He wants
I don't know.
I
don't know. He's not writing the check either.
Write the check to government. You can do it.
No, he likes those taxes.
I have a question for the senator, who has long advocated lower taxes, likes to steal our jobs and take them to. So my question is, if you were the governor of New York, okay, which I think is a very different kind of state than Florida. I think the infrastructure here and the cost of that infrastructure is significant and in a completely different way than some of the challenges that Florida faced that you succeeded by pursuing some of your policies. You know, when you say, okay, we don't want congestion pricing, you don't like, you think we should have lower taxes, how would you pay for everything that's going on in this state if you were in charge?
Look, I cut $10 billion of taxes and my revenue skyrocketed, right? I increased the tourism by 50%. You guys come down, spend all your money, you buy our homes, and you don't use services.
Yeah, but there was a much lower base going on to build from.
If you're the governor of New York, what you ought to start with is make it easier for people to do business. Slow down, speed up all the permitting. Make it just easier. Business is so frustrating in some of these states. And then number two is get rid of the regulation you don't need. Go through it. I cut I think about 20% of regulations. What you don't need, get rid of it. Maybe it was good 20 years ago or 40 years ago. And then you'll start growing, and you can cut taxes eventually. The truth is the permitting and the regulations actually had a bigger impact, I think, on my state than the $10 billion of tax cuts. I just made it faster to make a decision. You couldn't get a decision made.
But what would you do in terms of, I mean, when I talk about infrastructure, there's public transportation here in this city, for example, that's a real issue. And there's real cost associated with that. And you got to figure out some way to pay for it.
Andrew, the only way you can pay for it is grow your economy. We grew our GDP, I think, over 30% in 8 years. The federal government's got to do the same thing. Our government, any government, has got to grow your economy way faster to pay for what you need. If you can't grow your economy, you can't pay for anything. You got to grow the economy way faster.
And you think that there's that much space,
yeah,
in this city to do that?
People creative. Oh yeah. New York every state has the same opportunity. Remember, the 4 years before I got elected, we lost 832,000 jobs in Florida. In my 8 years, we added 1.7 million jobs.
But, I mean, one point that was made earlier, which is true, is that socialism is or whatever you want to call it, democratic socialism, start slow, do it in a step, whatever you want, however you want to, is very popular with a large group of people, millennials. How do they eventually, I mean, is it you turn 40 and suddenly you start understanding, or how does it finally, do you think it's going to be different this time and we don't come back to that and we end up as an entitlement state akin to Sweden?
No,
you don't think
I believe Americans believe in the free market, and I believe the free market will win.
Which Americans? You got to be, that's clearly not true for a large segment of people who are eventually going to be the buyers, and they're the most attractive demo for advertising and everything else.
I live in a 50-50 state.
You're a dinosaur. You're a dinosaur.
I live in a 50-50 state. I was able to win my elections by talking about the free market, by talking about job creation, by talking about education reform, things like that.
Close down there.
Of course,
Senator.
it's a 50-50 state. Well, your senator here spent $60 million trying to beat me. Now he's mad because I did well with Puerto Ricans.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I feel the country moving closer. I think this Notre Dame thing brought us all a little closer, didn't we? We could all agree that was a horrible thing that we want to.
You should be optimistic. Things. I mean, we're gonna go faster.
So they have kids, they get jobs, they start paying tax, they start understanding what life is really like.
We got to go sell it. We got to go sell. We got to go sell the things we.
That's what Reagan said. Every generation, we're going to lose it. We got to resell it every generation.
One final question for the senator. Right now, Florida is still a net receiver of funds from the federal government relative to New York.
Because of
when
Medicare.
will that change?
Because of Medicare.
Because of Medicare. But that's a huge cost.
Yeah, but we get 30% less than what we pay in for transportation fees, right? We get half as much money as New York does for each Medicaid recipient, right? So the only thing you're talking about is Medicare. I mean, what's happening? People make their money here, and they figure out they can't afford to live up here, and they move to Florida and they get their Medicare. That's the difference.
Senator, thank you.
Move to Florida.
Okay. We can visit. Okay. Becky's, I think, around there somewhere.
there.
She may be down south.
How to spend all of our money.
All right.